YouTube, Winworthy here with another awesome video. Now, it's been a little while, but I'm back with a collection update. I figured I'd feature one of my displays of Bionicles to start off the video. Here I have a bunch of Toa that I have. There's a good long while where a lot of these guys were in pieces and boxes and different storage units around the country, but I've finally collected pretty much all my collection aside from one box of miscellaneous stuff. I'm gonna have that hopefully soon, and I'll be able to complete a few characters like Jala and Antraz and just a few other characters that I had growing up. But for these guys here, I got my box of pieces and I managed to build most of these from memory. Aside from Takanuva, obviously, he's fucking huge. But yeah, it feels good to have all these Toa together, and I like to imagine it as sort of like Spherus Magna's future, and possibly, these may be the only Toa left. So, yeah. Alright, this is definitely one of my favorite displays I've got going on right now. It's sort of like a casual lounge sort of set, and you've got a little bar area and you've got yourself a little bit of a couch space, and I've pretty much done a whole bunch of different groups of characters that I've put in here in different situations, and for this particular video I happen to have the classic Avengers set up. Just a few characters that I find are some of the more prominent Avenger characters that have ever come out, and I've been watching the movies a lot recently too, so I'm very much inspired by that. So a lot of these characters are the ones that they use particularly in those movies. Yeah, and I've got like a couple little scenes going on here, like all sorts of little conversations, and I like to think that there's some cool stuff going on here. Alright, so now this next little box here is kind of an amalgam of different things. There's a lot of villains in this section. I kind of have them all sort of meeting up here, and I even have a new Fantastic Four little set up there. I've got these four guys together. I sort of like having them in these alternate looks. You got Wolverine and his brown and yellow costume, or orange or whatever, and you got Black Suit Spidey, and then you got the Gray Hulk. And Ghost Rider, well, he always looks cool like that. But yeah, I really like having these characters together, and this particular look, like it's sort of an embodiment of the time. Like I think like the original comic was probably, I think it came out somewhere in the 90s, but these looks were sort of off the heels of that. I don't know if they ever appeared in the comics looking like this, but to me it just looks like, I don't know, maybe just palette wise it looks good. So alright, so this setup is a little intense. Obviously it's a massive crossover of different characters. A few of these sets here, I only have so many characters from the series, so I kind of decided the best way to display them would be to just throw it into some sort of fighting style arena match. So I've got a lot of my graphic novels here all piled up into kind of like a ring, I guess, and it actually gives me a place to store them as well, and also using the display, which is nice. And I just kind of been sort of throwing up different characters and adding and replacing characters from this setup, but it sort of works pretty well for me, and it's kind of entertaining. I got some interesting versus. I think I had Gohan versus Pikachu a little while back, and I had Vegeta versus the Hulk, and right now, we got this awesome Terminator versus Alien setup. I know normally people would think, oh, maybe wouldn't the Predator be a better pairing because of the movies and whatever, but I actually had a Predator figure recently. It was the SH Figure Arts one, which was a pretty cool figure sculpt wise and all that stuff, but the thing kept falling apart. Like, its pieces were hard to like stick on, and anytime you tried to pose it, it would just like fall apart. So I just sort of got frustrated with it after a while and kind of just traded it in at my local trade-in spot. Actually, it's there's the store just outside of Vancouver. It's called Toy Traders, and it's got like literally everything you could possibly want if you're into like comics or pop culture or film, any sort of things like that, like video games. Like, it's got tons and tons of stuff, and they have like a full-time like trading service there, and you can bring in like action figures, and they give you reasonable amount of store credit there. And I actually haven't even had to pay money for a long time for a figurine, because I've just been building up credit there, because there was a while where I was sort of liquidating quite a few figures from my collection. I was sort of trying to kind of condense it and make it a little bit more refined, I guess. Like, I sort of had too much going on and too many like teams that I was trying to build, and that's sort of why you see Marvel Legends. My sets sort of kind of revolve more around like the 1970 to like that. There's sort of a theme to the costumes, and I sort of just want to keep it kind of minimal, because like these figures, they take up a lot of space and a lot of time, a lot of money, and like I like collecting, but I just don't want to have like so much that I get buried in it, and it's sort of starting to feel like that. So I definitely worked out in my favor, because now I have all this store credit, and whenever a figure comes out that I actually am really interested in, I think would fit perfect in my collection, such as I've been needing like a Storm for a really long time, like a classic Storm, or like but they haven't even announced a classic Storm yet for Marvel Legends, but hopefully they'll do that soon. I still sort of need a She-Hulk for my Avengers, and I would feel more complete with it then. But as those figures do get released and come out, I'll be able to get them. It'll be pretty cheap on my part, which is nice. And but anyways. So here is my, I guess you could call it street level setup. It's Spider-Man and a bunch of street level heroes and a lot of Spider-Man villains and stuff, and I even got a couple guest stars in this little area too. Obviously I use more of my graphic novels or trade paperbacks here as sort of like to help with the display and help with storage. And I could always like take these apart and pull out an issue if I want, and it's not a big deal because then I get to pose them all differently, so it's all good. We've got Ben Reilly, the clone. I was really, for a very long time, looking forward to getting a figure version of this character. I always loved the costume. I thought he was like super cool, and I always liked the character. And I just have them sort of like keeping these two apart, sort of, I guess, styled after the 90s cartoons opening, if you're familiar with that. Goblin and Craven sort of bearing down on old Jameson here, and maybe he deserves what's coming to him, but who knows. I got Spider-Girl just kind of hanging out in front of them, but Hobgoblin and Knock are sort of making a deal maybe, or facing off, who knows. A stealth Iron Man sort of sneaking through the streets and coming across the Rhino, and he seems to be conspiring, maybe planning some sort of crazy heist here with Black Cat. And right here we've got 2099 Spider-Man, obviously out of time. Definitely a cool figure. It's one of my, I don't really collect too many Spider-Verse type characters, but I certainly love 2099, Spidey, and Spider-Girl for sure. I used to read Spider-Girl in my English class, and I think it was like grade 8 or whatever. So, and then right here is a cool meetup of all these street level heroes. There's one character I wish I had, and it's Jessica Jones, but in her I can't remember her superhero name. I think it might be Jem. I'm not sure, but I wish I had that version of her. It came out in some SDCC exclusive box set, so I'm literally never going to see it in my life unless they do happen to re-release it. But I wish I had that so I can throw it in here. This kind of pairing of characters sort of modeled after all the Netflix TV shows and stuff, but just in their classic looks, you know. Yeah, so that's it for these sort of detofs here. As you can see, I sort of have it this awesome shelf. I moved to this new place a couple months ago, and I've been able to do so much with these shelves. Like, it's been absolutely incredible. But yeah, so thanks for listening. Till next time.